Hello and welcome back to our virtual show, the show that will be delivering from the 22nd to the 29th of May. Over this period of time, we'll be giving on average 3 speakers today. Today is a very special day where we're going to be giving 5 speakers today. So we've already had some in the morning. We're going to have a wonderful talk just in a second from Photospeed. And then later on this evening, we have Kevin Mullins, which is going to be another brilliant talk that we're all looking forward to. So if you're wanting to catch up on any of the videos that we've previously gone live with, you can go to our website, which is cambrianphoto.co.uk. Click on the Photo and Optics show and you'll see the link to the speakers there. Alternatively, there is a link in the description where you can go to and see all the talks. Not only can you see all the rewatches, there is also a schedule for all the ones that are coming up as well. You're able to click onto our platforms, hit the reminder button, and you'll be reminded when we go live. Also, we're very happy to say that all the virtual talks that we're doing are for free. Because of this, we are asking for donations, which will go to chosen charities and local food banks. This can also be found on our website. Thank you very much for joining. Please let us know that you are watching live. I can see that a lot of you are already, but in the comments, let us know that you're actually there. Give us a hello, give us a wave. Just so we know that we're actually speaking to people. It does make us feel a little bit better. And there we go. Thank you, Andrew. Good to see you. Right, okay. It's my pleasure to invite Tim from Photospeed, who's going to give us a nice demonstration on color calibration. Hello, Tim. How's it going? You okay?
Hello. Hi. Well, thanks for inviting me on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to have you here. Obviously, we can never have enough information about when it comes to printer profiling and all that sort of thing. It's a nice sort of final round off to get the absolute best results out of our images. So yeah. It's lovely to have you here. I've got a couple of highs and hellos coming through. So from Andrew, afternoon from my garden. Oh, very nice. Yeah, it's nice and warm out there, so it's lovely to see. Paul Jones, hi, still here, never leaving. So nice hi from Rub, hi from Nigel, good to see you. Chris Ward, looking forward to some good tips, especially using matte duo paper. So I'm sure we'll get to that. So as Tim writes that down on his list.
I'm going to write that
down. Oh, that's brilliant. So you've made a little presentation for us to go through, haven't you, Tim? Yep. So I'll let you crack on and enjoy the talk, everyone.
Okay, well, yeah. Thank you for inviting me on board. It's been great. Always come and join you at Cambrian and just share our knowledge of printing, really. So this afternoon, what I wanted to do was go through what I call, well, it's camera to print is the title of the talk. However, also it's the 3 foundations of printing, as I call them, because I think if you get these three things right in your workflow and your printing, then you can print fairly easily, and you can troubleshoot your problems pretty simply if these 3 foundations are in place. Now, first of all, I just want to introduce myself, really. For those of you who haven't met me or talked to me on the phone in the past, I'm Tim. I'm the technical manager at Photospeed. So I've been with the company about almost 2.5 years now. Before that, I worked as a digital retoucher for a large portrait company. And then before that, I was a freelance photographer for 12 years. I like to tell people I had my career in photography first and then got a proper job, shall we say, instead of having my career and then doing photography a bit later on. But now I'm with Photospeed and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm currently also studying for my master's degree at Falmouth. So I've got my arty side as well coming out. So I'm doing a bit of everything. And before I get going, I do have to say a big hello to Margaret, because she did email me and tell me to mention her as well in these talks. So she's there. She's there. She's supervising me today. So, right then. So, without further ado, let's start talking about these three foundations. So, what are they? Well, first of all, we have the camera, and we have our screen or monitor and the computer, and then we have the printer as well. So for me, everything starts within the camera, and then we edit on the screen, and then we output through the printer. Each of these has to be, to a certain point, correct to move on to the next process. Now, let's talk about the camera to start with. Now at Photospeed, we are mainly in the printing game and printing and papers and things like that. But at Cambrian, also you have your cameras and things, and we can get the right results through the camera as well. But from a color management point of view and a printing point of view, the best way is always get things right in camera first. That's how I was taught. When I was working as a photographer, I used to do some portraits for a large company. And I had a mentor called Keith Hills, and he was very set on getting everything in camera right. So if you get it right in camera, then you've got less time in front of the screen, that be it exposure, or his big thing was cropping and composition. So for every person I got off a little bit off center and he had to crop, he would dock me some money for it. I'll tell you what, I soon, very quickly, got the people in the center of the viewfinder and in the center of the picture as well. So it was a little bit of a shock and a bit of a steep learning curve when I did that, but certainly did me the trick. So I always look around the edge of the frame before I carry on press that button, because I make sure that I want to do as little in the computer as possible, although that's where I can do retouching and things as well. So everything starts in the camera. So now, the big thing in camera, I always think, apart from getting everything framed correctly, so giving you less to do in the computer, is the old discussion of JPEG versus RAW. Now, it used to be kind of a debate that was on the front of every photography magazine. When you walked into WH Smith's and you looked at all the photography magazines, there was always a big thing saying JPEG versus RAW. Now, I haven't bought a photography magazine for a long time, but I haven't seen the ones I have seen. I haven't really seen this debate as much anymore. But basically, JPEG versus RAW is a JPEG. I always think of is like a Polaroid. So your camera will take the picture in RAW, then process it, and then spit it out for you. Well, not spit it out, but save it to your memory card. And it will make some alterations. It will do color for you. It will just make those alterations, saturation and contrast and all these lovely things, and apply some parameters to it and give it you on the card. Now, we can still edit that file to a reasonable standard. And we can then just edit that and print it. Very good for events and things like that, where you haven't got time to spend a lot of time editing and things. Whereas RAW is the digital negative. You can take that file and it's got the full range of data in there, all the color, all the shadow detail, everything, all the range, spectrum of everything in there, and you can edit that. So I would always say, if you can, because memory's so cheap now. I remember when I bought my first digital camera, I was shooting bands at the time, and then I wanted a memory card, and a 1 gig memory card was over £100 when I first bought one. I had to go down to Jessop's and get one because I'd gone from film to digital, and I thought, oh yeah, it doesn't come with a card, does it? So I had to go down and get one. But now, I mean, you can buy 64 gig for like £30 or something, can't you? I'm probably out of date on memory, but kind of around that kind of that is. So I'd always say, if you can shoot RAW. But then again, I do know photographers. There's a couple of Sony photographers we work with that shoot JPEG and output and absolutely fine in constant light conditions. If you're using flash or say a rotor light system, where you can predict the color and you can predict what you're going to get out of the camera, JPEG, absolutely fine. You can still print just as big and just as kind of the quality with it. I would say though, the advantage of RAW is 16-bit, which we'll touch on a little bit later, but it will just make your gradients a little bit smoother for you and have a little bit more color information in there. Okay, and also I like to add this one in. Also, I always say get off auto as well, which I'm sure a lot of you do. You're always going to get a better result if you're kind of controlling what you're going to be getting. To be honest, I work a lot in aperture priority. When I was shooting weddings, everything was probably in aperture priority. Everyone used to joke that my lenses didn't really need anything above 2.8 because I never went above that. Everything was very shallow depth of field while I did. So I just worked in aperture priority probably 80% of the time. So, okay. Now, briefly touched on cameras and things. So now we're going to move on to the main part really, which is what we're going to be talking about, which is the color management and how we get a decent print from our camera and then out of our printer. Okay. So, first of all, why do we need color management? Now, we need color management basically to predict the colors across various devices. In this case, from our camera to our screen to our printer. It also helps to give you a consistent color as well. So if your screen doesn't match your prints, it can help with that. The big one I find is the screen's too bright and your prints are too dark, and it's marrying up that as well, which color management can help with. Also, your prints have a color cast, so you're printing monos, printing black and whites, and you have a horrible green cast or a horrible magenta cast or blue cast. I mean, I've seen it all, pinks. Color management will profile that out for you and make a nice neutral print. Now, with fotospeed, if you buy a box of paper from Cambrian, it is a free service we offer. So with our box of paper, you don't just get all the paper, 25 sheets or 50 sheets or 100 sheets in the box. You also get me at the end of the phone. And I'm there to help you. If you've got any problems at all, however silly you think it is or whatever, just please give me a call. I can always help. Also, the profiling service, I personally do the profiles myself. I'm working at home at the minute, but I have my profiling machine here and I'm running through profiles daily. So please send them in. Also, profiling will also save you some ink and paper as well, because you're getting predictable results. You know what's going to happen. You're not burning through loads of paper trying to get a result. You can just perhaps take 1 or 2 sheets usually to kind of get the print you want. And there again, it allows you to enjoy printing and you get less frustration and more hair. So, perfect example here. This is what color management can do for you. So we've got our lovely black and white on the left-hand side from John Swannell, and then on the right-hand side, we've got a horrible green one with a green cast. So this is what color management can do. It can get rid of those green casts for you. Okay. We need to talk a little bit about color to start with. I won't get too into it, but we'll just talk about how we see color and how we perceive color. So basically, color is all in our minds. We like to say color doesn't really exist, but it's in our mind, and we all see color slightly differently. So I've got a couple of little games. They should work quite well online, hopefully. We did the other day in a Zoom call. Now this gradient here is a gradient line. Now it looks like some of it's kind of light on one side and dark on the other. Now if I remove the background, it becomes a solid line. Now this is I didn't believe this when I first saw it. Basically, it's our mind playing tricks on us. We put a dark color in it, it automatically makes it look lighter on that gradient there. And I have measured this in Photoshop because, like I said, I didn't believe it. So I popped it into Photoshop and measured the original file when it is actually a solid grey line. They have the same values from end to end. Now, with this one, if you could all stare at the dot in the middle, I hope this works if you've got a small screen. But if you just keep staring at that dot in the middle of the screen, we should see, when the picture changes in a minute, we should all see a color image. And then if we look away and look back, we should see a black and white image. Now this is basically your eyes taking the color within this image and then reapplying it. Yes, Paul.
I'm watching, Tim.
Yeah, watching. It depends on the screen sometimes, but I always like to keep it in because it does work. So you can see me getting closer to it.
I'm getting. And there it is. It's color.
It's color. Then you look away and it's a black and white. This is where color management gets really tricky because it's all in our brain effectively, and it all kind of personal perception and things like that. In fact, I see Paul Joe's down there. Yes, it worked. Fantastic. Good. Right. Let's move on. So basically, we all see color differently. Now, men and women see color differently as well, as I'm sure Margaret will tell everyone if you meet her in the shop. Basically, 1 in 3 men are colorblind. So as men, we all have a deficiency basically in a certain color. Mine's green. I think John's in the office is magenta. So we all see color slightly different. Now, women, so I think it's 1 in, is it 1,000 or 3,000 are colorblind. So basically, when you take your prints along to club, always get them checked by your female colleagues. I always like Margaret coming and checking mine, to be honest, when she's down. So she'll soon tell me if there's a color cast on them. So this is what makes color management basically so tricky. But we can combat this with color profiles and things, which I will talk about now. Now, was there any quick questions on any of that? I've kind of scooted through it a little bit, and I just want to kind of make sure everyone's okay.
I think we're doing okay for the moment, Tim. I think everyone's just enjoying the talk. Okay. Some people commenting about how they can see the picture turning from color to black and white there, so that's always good to see. So,
right, fantastic. Okay, so how do we combat all of us seeing color differently? Well, basically, we use a profile. A profile is basically a set of data, color data. So, what is a profile? So a profile is, it says on here, a tag or label that describes the color of a particular image or device. So basically, a color profile was invented, shall we say, or kind of uniformed by the International Color Consortium. I believe it was around 1996, I think, off the top of my head. A group of companies basically got together, formed the International Color Consortium, and basically decided on what a universal value of color would be. So this shade of, this kind of gradient or shade of red would be this number in binary or computer language. So they could accurately read color and then make it the correct color by a color profile. So a profile basically is a set of data that will tell the computer how to display, or should I say the computer or the printer, on how to print or display that color. So that is compared against the value given, the universal value given to it by the International Color Consortium. Now, I hope that makes sense. It's a bit of a, so say a red color had a value of 1, but your device is displaying it at 2, the profile, which I'll talk about how we create the profiles in a minute, but the profiles would then -1 from that value you're seeing on your screen to make it correct and display. It's basically like a filter, effectively. It filters color to display it correctly. But I will talk about that a little bit more in a second, kind of perhaps make a little bit more sense. So there's 2 types of profiles. There's basically a profile for your screen or monitor, which displays how your picture looks on your screen. And then there is a profile for your printer, and that just dictates how the picture will print. Now, the printer is the one that takes away the color cast in your monos and things. And the one on the screen should also do the same and make sure you're not seeing any color cast on the screen. And hopefully we will get pretty close between the 2. because obviously they're two separate profiles. There can be certain variations in it, but we'll talk about that as well as we go on. Now, the first one we need to do is the color management of our screen. So screen profiles are usually done by a little device called a color calibrator. And if you have ever done this, this one on the screen here is the Spider 5. They've actually replaced this now with the Spider X. This is from Data Color, but there's also another company called X-Rite that do a calibrator as well. And you basically put this little device on the screen and it fires loads of color at you through the screen, through a full range of spectrum of color, different gradients, different intensities. It kind of fires brightness as well at you. And it basically then creates a profile measuring all those colors and how it is measured through your screen to the values it should be, and then basically applies that filter or that profile and filters it through to make it the color display what it should be, or what the color consortium say it should be. And this is all about getting consistency, so all the pictures kind of look the same on your screen. So as we can see here, we got a before and then we've got an after on here. A bit of an extreme kind of sense. I did my Mac the other day. Macs are always a bit blue. So when you firstly profile them, everything looks a bit kind of warm after you've done it, but they do kind of marry up and it does make sense. So that's the screen, and we're creating that profile by doing that. And the software for these devices does it all for you. It's just a step through. You hold the profiler on the screen like it is here, and it just fires color at you and displays all the gamuts of color, measures them, applies those changes into the filter and the profile, and then it installs that for you, even so you don't really need to even change anything or do anything with it. Okay. Now, the one thing the calibrators don't do fantastically, I've found, is the brightness on the screen. Now, they do color absolutely wonderfully, but what I get a lot of calls on is when people are printing, they always say, I've calibrated my screen, but my prints are still coming out dark. Now, this is generally because the monitor is too bright. I say generally because there's always that 1 in 10 chance that there's something else going on, but 9 out of 10 times, it is usually the monitor is too bright. Now, the simple way to do this is to print off a print, hold it up to the screen, and adjust your monitor to match the print, or as close as you can get it. I think if you get within about 90%, you're doing really well. That would be a really good goal to get it there. But there's always going to be that 10% of what we call the dark arts of printing, where you kind of, it's your interpretation of how it's going to look on screen. There will be a slight difference always, but you can minimize that and spend a lot of time doing it, refining it. When you're in the software for these devices, they also give you an option to set the brightness level. Now, they set the luminance within the software, and it is in a measurement of CMs. So we say to put that to around, I usually set it to around about 100 CMs or candescents. But some people use anywhere between 80 to 120. I just kind of go in the middle, and it seems to work quite well. So anything around about the 100 CM square, I think it is, incandescence. Okay, but the simplest way is basically to do what this chap's doing here. Hold up a print to the screen and adjust your screen to match the print. And that seems that the old ways are the best sometimes. Okay. Now, was there any quick questions on that before I move on to the printer? So
no, I think we're doing still okay
on
that one.
Well, if there is any questions while I'm talking, just tap them in and I can answer them.
And we'll certainly get to them if there is any questions. Yeah. So that's not a problem.
I'm rambling. Please stop me. Right. Okay. So the next part of this process is the printer. Now, this is the one that can make can make the difference between a good print and a bad print, I always think, because what we have to get our heads round is what comes out of the printer, if we have profiled it, is correct. Now, it could be printing with a green cast, but as long as that cast is consistent, if it's printing green consistently, that printer is printing correctly. Now, it kind of sounds a bit odd, but with a profile, that should neutralize out. However, what comes out to your printer is how it is going to print. We can't affect how the printer is going to print via our computer and via calibrating our screen and things like that. We can adjust for it on screen, but we can't change it, if that makes sense. That's where profile will come in, because that will change it for us. That will change how a printer prints differently. And each printer is different. I've got two, sat next to me here, I've got two P600 Epsons. Both brand new, both straight out of the box when I went back to home working. They both print differently, both with Epson ink, and one prints a little bit warmer than the other. So I have two sets of profiles, one for each printer. And this is just down to it being an electrical device. The heads are slightly different, perhaps. They're the same head in them, but they just print slightly differently. You probably only notice if you hold the print side by side, but they do just slightly differently. So I profile for both of them, and then they print the same now as well. Okay, so how do we profile a printer? Well, basically what we do is you go onto our website and you click on the support tab, and then you go to color management and you download one of our free profiling packs. There's instructions in the paper as well to guide you through this and where to find this profiling pack. And then we print off what we call a fotospeed color management chart. Now this is all the blocks of color that the profiler will scan. Now these blocks of color are the same as what your scanner, your screen calibrator, should I say, is going to be scanning when it's doing its calibration on your screen. Exactly the same process. But when we go through the printer, we need to print a chart on each of the papers as well, because each paper interprets the ink slightly differently, and therefore the color changes as well. So with the monitor, it can just fire color at us, and we can measure it almost, I want to say remotely, but it's not. It's just measuring it on your screen there. But obviously with a printer, we need a physical print to be able to manage that and to scan it for you. So you have to print off one of these charts on each of your papers you're going to be printing on, and then you post it into us. There's a booking form and everything within the pack as well as instructions. I've also done some YouTube videos as well on printing this chart. And if you have any problems at all, just pick up the phone, and I'm always at the phone, and I can always talk you through it. Or we also offer a service where I can log in and have a look and see what's going on, because there can be a few other little things going on, little niggly things, especially on Macs, sometimes with wrong drivers installed and things like that. But you basically print this one off. Now, when this is printed off, it also has to be printed without any color management turned on and no profile assigned. Now, the printer has its own kind of automatic color management it likes to apply, its own set of profiles actually built into the printer itself in the firmware. And this is what we call the printer's color management. And we have to turn these off. The lucky thing is, if you're on a Mac, if you print it through a little piece of software called the Adobe Color Print Utility, which I kind of recommend for Mac and PC, because there's a few less buttons to press and things to go wrong. Basically, all you can do is press print, and it will just print the chart for you quite successfully. On a Mac, it will turn off color management for you. So it disables any color interference from the printer, and it will disable all profiles for you as well. Now, if you're on a PC, it doesn't turn it off automatically. You do have to go into the printer properties and turn off the color management section in there, and just turn off the option for the printer to color manage this for you. If you don't, it will come off looking pretty much like the one on the screen we're seeing here. When we print these off, they should come off quite a lot darker than this, because that means color management's been turned off and there's no profile being assigned. If they do look like the one on your screen, there's something going on, so there's some color management happening when you're printing the chart and things. If that is happening, just go back and perhaps rewatch the video, or pick up the phone or drop us an email, and we can usually find out where the problem is, and I'm more than happy to have a look for 5 minutes and just help you do it. So let me just click on here. Oop, there we go, bit of a stop there, sorry. So once you've posted the profile into me, I receive it here and I scan it on one of my machines here. And it basically, my scanner is basically a paper version, or a larger scanner than the one you put on your screen. And it basically get my words out. It basically scans each one of those squares, takes the value, then compares it to what the value set out by the International Colour Consortium is, makes the adjustment, and then embeds that in a profile. And that is what you use to filter your colour when you're printing. And we assign these profiles. This is in Photoshop here. So we basically assign them in, there's a colour management section just at the bottom, or should I say halfway down. Now, if you select Photoshop Manages Colours, you'll be able to select the profile in there. So we can then select which profile we're using. And then also, if we need to turn off colour management, I've circled it in blue here. There is a print settings, and that takes you into the properties where you can change. And here is what you will see when you go into your printer properties. And these are the settings we need to set when we are printing. So the first one is to select the media type. Now this is as simple as if you're printing on a matte paper or a luster or gloss paper. For all our matte papers, all our fotospeed matte papers, on an Epson, we recommend either archival matte, works really well, or if you haven't got archival matte, ultra premium presentation matte works fantastic with all our papers. Now, if you're on a Canon printer, I recommend either selecting matte photo paper, or if you have the option, heavyweight fine art, and that will use the matte ink on both of those types of printers, Epson and Canon. If you have a HP, it's probably good job. Give me a call and we can talk through the settings, because it gets a little bit more complicated on the HP side of things. Now, the next one we need to do is obviously paper size. If we're printing on A4, A3, A2, or if you're very lucky and have a roll printer, you can put up 24-inch or higher. I also put the print quality on high. Now, I've done tests between high and highest. I haven't seen massive differences. There's always going to be the odd print where it will make a huge difference. I always put it on high because it gives me a really decent print and more than I need. And it also uses a little bit more ink. Sorry, a little less ink, which is always good. Now, the big one we need on a PC is turn off color management. And this is about halfway down. I don't know if you can see, depending on how big your screen is, but there's on the Epson, there is a drop-down menu that says mode about halfway down. There's an option in there that says off, no color adjustment. And on the Canons, they hide it away. I don't know quite why they do, but they do. And they call it color matching. So basically, if there's a little tick box about halfway down called color intensity, and then you can go into there and then go into a matching menu and turn it off. All this is in our instructions and on my videos on YouTube on how to color management and things, and just select which printer you're doing, and I'll take you through it that way. On a Mac, it's a little bit more of a drop-down menu, which again is a little bit more easy, but all the Mac drivers kind of look the same, and you have, I think you have a quality and media sections. It's like a drop-down menu. You don't get a big box like this you do on a PC. Okay. Now, like I said, this is how we assign the profile. So we need to just put printer manages colors and select the profile we're using. And then we need to select something called rendering intent. I should say also that each paper, I name each paper obviously with the paper type you're going to be using, and then also if it's what printer you're working on in your name, and I also date them as well, so we can kind of find out what we're doing and where we are, and if something has gone wrong, we can work out how often we need to profile, because I kind of recommend at least once a year, if not every 6 months, to reprofile. You shouldn't need to reprofile if you're changing inks or filling up inks, should we say. If you're using our inks, our refillable inks, we spent a lot of time on batch-to-batch consistency. So you shouldn't need to reprofile. Also, if you're using obviously genuine manufacturer's inks, they are pretty much matched batch to batch, same as our third-party inks, we like to think. There are companies out there that I don't kind of think they quite have the batch to batch consistency, and that's where you can see a little bit of a shift in your colors, because their magenta could be fine on one set of inks, then you change a cartridge or refill it, and it could just slightly be off on the next, and that could cause you a few problems with your profile. At that point, we just need to get you reprofiled again and go from there. Now, rendering intent is something else we need to think about and need to be aware of. I'm going to touch on it briefly. I'm not going to go massively deep into it because you can get a little bit bogged down in it and things. But basically, when we're printing, we have two types of rendering intent we need to use as photographers, which is perceptual and relative rendering intent. So let me just explain briefly kind of what rendering intent does. So at the top there, on the top left, we have our RGB working space, which is usually what I recommend working in Adobe 1998 color space in Photoshop, which you can adjust in your color settings, which is in the edit menu, I believe. Now, your printer works in a CMYK working space. Now, what we have to do is convert all this data in the top left and push it into the CMYK working space at the bottom. Now, as printers have got better, the bottom left, the CMYK working space, has got a lot better and it has got bigger. So this changes isn't happening as much as I've kind of demonstrated here, but this is kind of the extreme kind of version of it. So as you can see on the right, basically, if we put our color space underneath the CMYK color space that we've done here, we have what's called a gamut mismatch. And this is color that your printer can't produce. And as I said, as printers have got better and moved up, I mean, the Canons now with their 12 inks and the new Epsons actually with their 12 inks as well, or 11 inks, I think they believe, can produce a lot more of this color than I'm demonstrating here. However, for this purpose, this color, this gamut mismatch is basically our printer cannot produce it. So to get around this, what we do is we use what's rendering intent and a software conversion to get these out of color, this out of gamut color within our printer's printable range. So the first one we use is perceptual. And basically what this does is it pushes all the out of gamut color into our color space. And all the other colors slightly shift along the way to allow and create some room for these extra colors to go in. Now this can slightly shift color, and in my opinion, it kind of makes things a little bit more vivid, closer to a bit like the Mac screen. Really good for punchy images and things like that. Now the other type we use is relative, Now this takes its time a little bit more, and it will map the out of gamut color to the nearest color that the printer can produce. So it will shift things ever so slightly, but it will be a lot more accurate. So relative almost gives you a little bit more lifelike kind of picture, shall we say. The one, which one, I always get asked, which one do I use? I use both, to be honest. I flip between the two. I always used to use perceptual, but I did a test the other day for a video I was doing on soft proofing and looking at how these relative or these rendering intent, should I say, affect how we print. And I actually preferred the print I did in relative. The best thing to do, I always say this is personal preference, and the best thing to do is, if you've got a sheet of A4 paper, chop it in half, print one piece of paper, or your little A5 now you've got with perceptual, one with relative, and very simply just go, I prefer that, or see which one you prefer. Very personal choice, as everything is with color management sometimes. It's just it's your work in the end and how you want it to look. So there's no real set rules. And I always say, just like I said, chop a piece of paper in half and just print one and just have a look. Okay. So basically to sum up, so perceptual gives you some visual detail. The luminance levels and the brightness are kind of preserved over hue and saturation. So I always think it just gives a little bit more vivid. And relative preserves the saturation and colors, so it will usually give a little bit more lifelike color. Okay, now there's another thing. I just want to go back to this here. You may see underneath rendering intent, underneath where I circled where it says color management, there's a little box that says black point compensation. I always recommend to keep this ticked. The reason being, when the rendering intent is shifting things around in your color gamut to try and fit these in and map things, it always hold, if you have that ticked, it always hold that black point for you. So you always get a pure black. So always keep that ticked. And it just stops your black drifting and becoming a muddy gray or anything like that. So, okay. I just want to finish by just talking briefly about differences between printers. And then I'll open up for some questions and things like that, because I realise I've gone through quite a bit, and I'm sure there's some questions. So there's two different types of printers effectively, mainly for photographers. There is a few others, but you don't need to quite worry about those unless you're doing events and things like that. The main difference is the ink type it uses. So the first type of printer we use is a dye ink-based printer, which generally has less colors in it. So it has 4 to 6 colors. This is usually a black, and then we've got our CMYK, so it's usually 4 colors, our yellow, magenta, and cyan in there. And this may come in an actual pack, like a big block of ink, or it may come in separate cartridges. Dye inks are really good on glossy and luster papers, really vibrant, really good color on them as well. Like I said, it looks really good. The downside to them is it poor archivability. I mean, I think the Canon ink and the Epson dye ink now was tested in the lab, and I think on archival paper, like all fotospeed paper is, it will probably last around 30 to 40 years if you keep it in a box under your bed. Don't let light ever touch it, kind of thing. We've probably all had a print from, say, Boots or Jessop's when they were still in business, and it starts to fade after a while if you put it up on the mantelpiece. That's usually because it's a dye ink they've used, and it will just start to fade. The other thing is the black and white capabilities of dye printers. They generally, I say generally because the new Epson Eco Tanks and the Canon 100S has a grey ink in there as well, so they're a little bit better on black and white, but generally it's making up the greys out of the CMYK colours, so those cyan, magenta, yellow and black. So usually, we can get pretty close with a custom profile, but we can't usually get a pure black and white out of the printer. The other type is a pigment-based printer. Now, these are usually larger machines. This is the Pro 1000 we've got here with the 12 inks in it, but they go down to A3, like the P600 I've got here is a pigment-based machine, and that has 9 colors. They're a lot more archival because they're ground minerals. They last a lot longer. I believe a archival print from a pigment machine will last over 100 years, at least 90. They have a larger color gamut as well, simply because they've just got more versions of the color. So like the Epson here has a light cyan and light magenta, so it can produce different ranges of color within that as well. Also, they have light blacks and grays and different blacks as well, even for printing on matte papers and luster gloss kind of papers as well. So you get a better black out of a pigment machine as well. Also, you can create a perfect neutral black and white out of a pigment machine. Now, I did see someone had a question about black and white printing, and as I'm kind of just touching on it here, with black and white printing and profiles, you still profile with our color management chart because it has patches of gray in there as well, all mixed in. So there shouldn't be a need to have a separate profile for black and whites. You still use a color profile. And I always print, I don't use black and white mode. Epson have a black and white mode on their printers, and Canon do as well. I always print with color selected and using the profile. And I would have to say my prints come out very neutral when I'm doing black and whites. A good profile, good custom profile will override all that. I like to take the challenge usually that I can beat Epson's advanced black and white mode with a good custom profile as well. And if you're really into your mono printing, we can even further what we call optimize the profile for you as well, which produces a second chart that you have to print and then send in to me. And then we can refine that process for you. So we really get into it. I think you'd only notice the difference if you really looked hard at it and held them side by side. Otherwise, I think the first chart would be absolutely fine for you, but I'm more than happy to have a chat about anyone who would like to do that, who's really want to get those grays perfect. But usually that first profile is absolutely fine. Okay, so almost there, I promise. So the last bit I want to talk about is how we view the prints. Now, all our lights in our house or in offices and things all emit a certain color of light as well. And this can affect how we view the print. And we may think a print has a color cast when actually it doesn't. It's the light reflecting off the paper that gives that. In the office at fotospeed, where my printers are, gives off a green light from the fluorescent tubes. So the big joke in the office is I print everything green. Now, I'm sure Margaret says I do print everything green, but I can assure you, hopefully I don't, because when I take them outside or view them under one of these viewing lights I hear on the right-hand side, this little Kaiser viewing light, they're always quite neutral. So you may have a green print and you think, oh, it's the profile's gone. But just if it's a sunny day like this, absolutely perfect. Just pop it outside. Usually between the hours of 10 and 1, usually, because that's usually the best light. In the evenings, it could get a little bit of yellow. But otherwise, you can always invest in one of these little desktop viewing lights. I'm sure we can get them into Cambrian for you. I will talk to Paul about that as well. And also, you don't have to spend a massive one like Joe Cornish has here. I think his was about £2,000, I think. Joe will probably correct me if he's watching there. So, but this is basically how he views his prints. And you can make sure that everything's okay. Also, they always highlight a little bit of detail and things that we can we can't really see sometimes if it's subdued light and things. And also, they make the prints look better a lot of the time. You may think something's a bit dark. You put it under the proper lighting, and it actually comes alive and really kind of gives you that punch. Okay. Well, I hope that has helped you or not confused you or bamboozled you at all. But basically, yeah, we hopefully started off in the camera briefly, gone through the monitor and the printer. And like I said, any questions, please just tap them in. I can always have some questions. And if we don't have time to answer things, please just give us a call and we will always be at the other end of the line for you as well. So yes, okay. Right.
Yeah, we're getting some questions in now too. So no, it's nice to see. Let's see if we can start from the top and sort of work our way down. So let's start here with Andrew. Andrew's brilliant at commenting on our lives. Lovely to have you along, Andrew. How often would you rerun a calibration on a Mac? I think this is on the screen, I believe.
Yeah, so the software wants you to do it every month, effectively, is what it says. Now, the screen that goes back to the old CRT days, and where they need it every day. To be honest, some labs used to employ someone actually going around. That was what their job did, and as soon as they finished, they used to go back round again. On an iMac, I would say every 6 months would be absolutely fine. I'm very bad with mine. I've got a BenQ monitor here on an iMac, but I probably do mine every few months. But every month, if you've got time, that is very good practice to do. So, but it's not going to drift massively within 3 months, shall we say? So we can always set these monitors are so good now. Same with printers, really. Sometimes the consistency, as long as you're using good ink, like genuine ink or fotospeed ink, will generally get good results and profiling and things like that. So yeah.
No, that's brilliant. I think we actually resolved this anyway. Do I need to profile every time I fill up using fotospeed inks? I think the simple answer there was no.
Shouldn't.
Shouldn't do.
Yeah. If you are, give me a call.
Yeah, if you're needing to, there's something wrong. So yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. We've got one which again I think will be a sort of fairly sort of straightforward answer. I've got some platinum etching 285 square 12 by 12. Is there any way I could get an ICC profile for my 1000? Yes, you can.
Oh yes, we need it to do it on an A4 sheet. If you give me a call, I should be able to sort that out for you. But
right, okay.
Yeah,
yes. So it needs to be on an A4. So that actually was a very good question.
It needs to be on A4 just because that's what the chart is and that's what everything's set up for. I've tried it, and some people send them on in A5s or 7x5s, and it's the chart miniaturized. And I have tried to scan those in the past. It just doesn't work because it needs 918 patches on that sheet. And
right.
if it's on 7x5, it will put it on like 6 sheets or something. So we do need it that way. But if you've got any odd size papers, our panoramic packs actually come with A4 now for this very reason. But if you've got square, just give me a call and I'm sure I can sort that out for you. So just dial the normal number and press 2 and it'll come through to me. I can sort that out.
No, that's brilliant. Next one's from Dave. Would you recommend using a daylight balance bulb rather than a normal type?
Yes.
Yes.
Daylight bulbs, perfect. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Those little viewing lights, they're all daylight balanced. So yeah, absolutely perfect. That'll give you you won't get any of those horrible greens or kind of yellows or anything that can be put in there. So
no, that's brilliant. So yeah, you can either use obviously the little panels, or if you wanted to invest in changing sort of bulbs in your room, then you can get that done as well. So that's brilliant.
Duo papers, isn't it?
There we go. Yeah. So next one's from Chris. Is there a knack when using the duo papers on making sure when you print on the reverse that it's the right way round? That is a good question.
Yes, there is. I spent a lot of time on this the other day when I was printing a book. So basically, I don't know if I can demonstrate this. So I've got my writing. So if I'll turn it out the right way. So you see my writing out there? I'll do that. So basically, when the print comes out of the printer, if we then, I don't know if I can demonstrate this very well. Basically, if the print comes out of the printer, so we're flat like this, and it's come out here, if you lift it up and then just put it straight back in on the other side, don't you kind of just do a motion. So if it's coming out like this, and this is the bottom, then you flip it. You basically just flip it so the bottom becomes the top, and you put in that way. Then does that make sense? I'm not really demonstrating this very well, am I?
I think a little bit of trial and error comes in as well, but it's like you're generating a circle almost.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if I can get all my transparencies here. So if it comes out, so I've got the bottom here, and we want to print on the back of this, I would then put it round. So that's the printable side here, but I want to print on the back. I would put it round and in that way, and I'll be printing there, and that should print out.
Brilliant. I think that's the best way that we can describe that anyway. So
yeah, it's tricky. It takes trial and error, and if you're printing through InDesign as well, that is another. When you're trying to print book, because it can do a perfect bind match for you and things like that, and that took me a while to get my head around. It took me about a morning. So, but yeah, anyway, if you're trying to do that, just give me a call. I can talk through that.
Not a problem. Not a problem. The next one is from. Let's bring this up here. So, hi, my Mac screen is lighten up or dim on the light in the room or outside. Does it mean it needs calibrating before or after that? So
no, if you go into system preferences and displays, there is a little tick box that says automatically adjust brightness. If you untick that, it will stop doing that for you.
Right. Okay, that's brilliant. So yeah, just stop that sort of movement from happening. Sort of
up and down. It's quite useful sometimes, but with color management and things like that, it can be a little bit problematic.
A big question here as well. So I want to get into printing. Where do I start? I think ultimately, just have a go and get cracking. Really.
Yeah, I mean, have a look at if you want to. Give me a call. And then we can have a talk and we can go through. That's probably the best way. Or speak to the guys at Cambrian as well. They will more than happily point you in the right direction of printers and things like that. But yeah, we can help you. And
we can certainly help.
Speed paper, you get me. So it's always good to buy speed paper with your printer. So for those very reasons, we can help you and guide you through. And we also run like academies and things like that, so we can do certain things as well. So
yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's brilliant. Just make sure we haven't got any more. I think that's it for the questions, actually. I think we're done there. Brilliant, Tim. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been wonderful having you and going through the very methodically going through it and nicely explaining each step, making it lovely to get through. If I've missed any questions, apologize. Obviously, you can still stick them in below, and we'll try and get to them as soon as we can as well. Once again, thank you, Tim, for joining us. Please make Tim feel nice and welcome on his exit out of here. And it's been lovely having you, Tim. I'll just drop you back down into the green room and we'll have a quick chat after the live.
Yeah, no problem.
But cheers for joining us, Tim.
Well, thank you very much for joining in. Thanks.
Cheers. Brilliant hearing from Tim there, and really sort of easily sort of talking us through all those different steps as he's repeated throughout that process. When buying fotospeed, you get the service that comes behind fotospeed as well. Fotospeed is something that we do supply as well. So all of that service can be available through us at the same time. We do have a promotion running between this show promotion as well, which is 20% off. There is a discount code on our website which will take you there. This will obviously only apply between the virtual show dates, which is the 22nd to the 29th of May. It's lovely comments coming through, big thank yous. We always like to see that, so thank you very much for commenting live. It always does help. If you're rewatching this video, you can still comment, ask questions, or we can get to them as much as we can. And if you can please share, like the videos, it always helps. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure that you like our page. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you can keep getting notifications about when we are going live. Later on today, we have got Kevin Mullins. It's going to be an absolute wonderful talk. Hoping to see you there then. Until then, goodbye for now.